everyone. Welcome back to a very special episode of Behind Enemy Lines Hockey Podcast. We have a special guest with us today, and actually, we're going to start things off. We're going to let him introduce himself and tell us a little bit about himself. Go ahead, Vincent. Welcome to the show.
Hey everyone, nice to meet you. I'm Vince Marino. I'm from Fort Erie, Ontario. Huge Montreal Canadiens fan, 48 years and counting, and looking forward to getting on with the boys and doing our thing.
Yeah. So just tell us a little bit about how, because I know you know Steve, and I've met you through Steve. Just give us a little bit of background of how you know Steve. I believe is through your Facebook page.
It is. I have I have a actual, I don't know how to, what would they say, like a site, a Montreal Canadiens site that I have. I have about 500 people on there. We discussed the game, and I met Steve through that, and I'm glad I did because he's become one of my best buds.
Okay, and it is a good Facebook profile page. I'm a member as well. I know there's a lot of great discussion on there, so it's great having you. Welcome to the show. If this all goes great, I'd love to have you on for more episodes in the future. As always, we have trivia question, and joining me as always, my fellow Schwigadite, my buddy Steve. Let's start it off with trivia.
Yeah, we outnumber the non-South Enders today, so
Yeah.
we can beat up on him a little bit later. And again, welcome, Vince. Good to have you on. Always nice to have a different perspective and add a third voice. So again, much agreement to what Sheldon says. If this goes well, we can do this time and time again. And it's nice to be able to have a round table. So we talked about Olympic hockey in the last episode. We'll continue a little bit with Olympic hockey since we are on the eve of the eve of the gold medal game against those unworthy Americans. So trivia question today being, how many former Montreal Canadiens players have won gold medals at the Olympics?
Okay. I know we had a little bit of a discussion before we went live talking about it, and there was a bunch of different guesses. I guess we're going to have to wait and see what the final result is and who. So with that, we're going to go into our because we are in an Olympic break. We're going to go into a breakdown basically of the last game, the U.S. Canada women's game, and then we'll do a preview of the Canada U.S. men's game coming up tomorrow morning. So Steve, you get us started if you have anything you want to go on the women's game.
Well, I will eat a tad bit of crow because in the last episode, you and I talked about the previous lead in the number of games that the women have played against each other. We know that, there are two nations that traditionally separate themselves in talent and in results. And that's the Canadians and the Americans. And with the rivalry series in the last World Hockey Championships, the Americans were on a 7-game winning streak. And yes, there was 2 overtime games, but the most recent game was around robin, which they handled as easily 5-0. And you and I gave a very bold prediction that we anticipated a similar result. So hats off to the Canadian women for showcasing an extraordinary effort. They did fall short in overtime 2-1, but it wasn't the result that I thought it was going to be. So yes, it kind of still stings. A loss is a loss when you lead up 57 and a half minutes plus and then lose in overtime. But the women played hard, and hats off to them because there's probably not many people that gave them the credit that they deserved. And again, I'll eat my tad bit of crow on this.
I know I was one of them. What are your thoughts on that game, Vince?
I thought it was going to be a lot similar to the first game, like you guys thought, and it didn't. It surprised me a little bit how they held that lead for that long because the U.S. looked like a way bigger team, and they moved a little bit faster than us.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking 3 or 4-0 or 3 or 4-1, but they took them to overtime, and good for them. But I didn't expect them to win, to be real honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure that anybody really did. I mean, if you're a serious hockey fan, realistic hockey fan, you pretty much have to recognize the U.S. was a superior team. But like I said, I know from what I've seen, Marie-Philippe Poulin played a fantastic game. If this is it for her, if this is her last game on the women's national team, it's a hell of a way to go out. The only comment that I think that I would like to add is I know in the overtime they looked pretty sloppy in the overtime, and I'm not sure how they got there if that's the way the whole game went.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't watch. I was at work. I was trying to follow the live updates, and I reaching out to buddies and my daughter who were watching it in snippets. And, again, it was a very defensive minded effort by the Canadians. They tried to cut down the ice, from my understanding, but the Americans are a team full of college kids. I think they had 40% of their kids still playing NCAA college hockey, and they've made a youth movement. And just at some point, youth will prevail when you get into a speed skating match on 3-on-3.
Did you actually get to see the game, Vince?
I watched the last period and the overtime, and if we're allowed to be honest here, guys, that was the worst overtime I have ever seen in my entire life. I'm not gonna lie, like it was the most sloppy hockey I have watched in 10 years. I'm not trying to be rude, but like I even said to my wife, I was like, I can't believe we're watching this. Right? Like this, there wasn't really any urgency. That it literally looked like a slow pace, because we're so used to watching the men and we take that for granted. But like this was just, it wasn't what I.
And that's what I meant by sloppy. Like, to me, it looked like I don't want to say it and slap you, but it looked like house league hockey. It was pretty pathetic. So we got a game coming up, at the time of recording this episode. It's Saturday afternoon. Tomorrow morning, at 8:40 a.m., I believe it is the big game, the Canada versus the men gold medal game. What do you expect to see in that tomorrow, Vince?
My prediction, or what do I expect to see?
A little bit of both. You got the floor.
I see Canada coming out strong. I think I think the United States is going to come out banging. They're going to be banging because they're going to look for trouble any way they can get it. They're going to try to get us off our game immediately. I don't think we're going to bite because we have one of the best coaches in the world, and I think we're going to take the lead early in the game, and I don't think we're going to look back. That's my prediction and what I think.
Are you going to be brave enough to give us an actual number, or just go with the win?
5-2 Canada.
Woo! Hey, I hope you're right. What do you think, Steve?
Well, I'll add on to that. A little bit of a lead in. We have played some very odd hockey for a team of probably the most talented group offensively that we've assembled, and that comes right out of the back end. And we have guys like Cale Makar out of the back that are right up there, league leaders every year since he's been in the league, as far as not only defenseman points, but league leaders in points. We have played from ugly hockey as far as not seizing opportunities. Other than the game against France, which was, a blowout, the game against Finland was what I expected from Finland, but not what I expected from us. So yes, it was a resilient effort, and overall we were the better team. Dominated them, but in a short event like the Olympics, and a one game do or die, it just goes to show that a hot goalie and a missed opportunity can lead to a little bit of a cardiac kid breakout. And it was nice to see that, without our captain in uniform, they're in presence but not on the ice, that we pulled out a win. I anticipate a better effort coming out against the Americans. We know what these guys are all about. The Four Nations Cup, that they know. The Americans, like Vince said, are going to be out there gunning. They're going to come out. I'm hoping that the one thing that doesn't get away from us is a physical game. I hope we play physical, but it's the cautiously optimistic, trying to be over physical to overpower them, and we get suckered into penalties. We've got one Tom Wilson. They've got about four of them, because they got the Ketchup brothers that just play like a loose squeeze bottle, and they're going to do the stupid shit that we expect them to do. I just hope that we can keep it a little bit more organized. And, much to Vince's comment, I think Cooper is the best coach in the league right now. He seems to motivate guys. He doesn't show tons of panic and desperation in his moves, and he has a game plan. So I'm predicting the same thing. I know if you listen to a pregame or post Finland game, pre-US game conversation, there's an expectation that Captain Canada, Mr. Crosby, might be in the lineup. I hope it's a decision made based on he can contribute and is going to be able to take a regular shift, not like the Ketchup brothers being greedy and wanting to play in the Four Nations Cup when they were both hurt, taking away roster spots for somebody that can give a better effort. So I'm hoping if Crosby plays, he's as close to 100% as possible, because we can use him out there. But again, Mr. McDavid seems to show up, and he just seems to do McDavid like things. And with him and McKinnon and Celebrini, I mean, we've got offense to burn. So I'm predicting a 4-2 Canada win. And I will give a shout out to Mark Stone, because I think this is the game where he finally puts in the effort and gets either the go ahead or the insurance goal, because he's kind of missing that big game moment, and that's what he's usually all about.
Um, I'm not as optimistic as you guys are on the score. I think it's going to be a 1-goal game. I hope it doesn't go to overtime. I don't know if my heart can handle that. It's pretty frustrating sometimes, especially when you know the talent that Canada has on the team. My problem is, and I noticed in the Finland game, they got down in the game early, and then it seemed like, for as great as McDavid and McKinnon, all them guys are, it seemed like they got out of the team game. It seemed more to me they were doing the rushes and trying to do it all alone, trying to do the pressure. Where Canada, I found, did the best is when, like, at some point later in the game, maybe halfway through the second period, Cooper put that smash line together, I guess you would say. Wilson, Bennett, and Reinhardt, I believe it was, or not, sorry, Marchand. And those three were out crashing and banging, and I think that got Finland off their game because they didn't know what to look for, and that opened up space for when McDavid, McKinnon, and all them came out, and they could, they really had room to move. Celebrini, I think, just was outstanding to me, was player of the game as far as I'm concerned. Everything that he does is just amazing. I know I haven't got to see him much, being a West Coast team, but um, if he's playing anything in the AHL like he is in the Olympics, that guy is a stud. Like, he's going to be, 4 years from now, he's going to be the Connor McDavid for Team Canada. Like I said, I'm expecting a 1-goal game, 2-1, 3-2. Like I said, I hope it doesn't go into overtime. That's going to be, stress level through the roof. As far as players individual, I thought they used Nick Suzuki well. I liked the fact that he was out there on some pretty key face-offs, taking the draw and winning. He was doing quite well. So on the Habs perspective of it, I think they're using Suzuki where Cooper always said they were going to use him, and he's being successful at it, as we've talked about in a previous episode. Anybody got anything they want to add before we move on?
I just want to say one more thing. I have a little bit of a prediction too. Steve mentioned Stone. I like that prediction. I think he's going to be in on the scoreboard, but I have a feeling Hagel's going to score a real big goal this game.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
As
we
long as
tend
it's
to
Canadian scoring, you're predicting.
yeah, yeah. As long as Cooper's got his guys, and Hagel is one of those guys that people questioned at the beginning. Point, Sorelli, Hagel, three Lightning players, but these are big game moments where Cooper dials in and he knows what he gets out of certain players. And much to Hagel being a Lightning player, he's due for one of those games as well. So I'm okay with it. He can score all 4 or 5 if he wants. It's not going to hurt my feelings.
Yeah. Well, as far as the score goes, I hope you guys are right and I hope I'm wrong. But either way, I hope just for a Canada win.
Well, you heard it here first, Vince. If he's wrong, it's lunch at Teddy's next time you're in Oshawa.
I think
Backed up about that. Yeah.
I think we're going there for supper tonight. Shh. Okay, let's move on to our topic. Today's topic, we're going to talk about the culture of the Habs, how things have changed over the last year, 2 years or so. It seems players are wanting to come to Montreal. It seems to be a more receptive attitude, which can only help us improve the team, on an important, that trade deadline deal that needs to be made to give a load up a player. And that's basically what we're going to talk about. I know, Steve, you have quite a bit you want to say on this, so why don't you start us off on this one?
Okay, well, yeah. So we'll talk about the culture. The culture is different in Montreal, and we say that not because it's the favorite team and our team. When you look at the culture across sports, and the culture is not just whether or not the organization wins or loses. It's not whether or not you have past champions. There's more to that. There's the environment. It's the camaraderie of the guys. but it goes outside of that. There's politics involved usually with some of these things. There's language. Families have got to move their players have got to move their families there. And you're talking about kids going to school. You're talking about taxes. The taxes in Canada are way different than like Dallas or Florida, where they pay only federal income tax, so they keep way more of their money. How do you get away from that? The Montreal Canadiens are the only pro sport team in all four major sports that have an obvious language barrier. So we don't just have English and French. We have predominant areas of the province of Quebec where French is the chosen first language. So a lot of the European players have come to Montreal, and they love it because Montreal is the most European city outside of Europe that you're going to ever go to. Right. So they all love that. It's a tourist destination for them when they're in Canada. And, the Europeans love playing there. American players, not so much. There's Western Canada players that don't like it so much because they didn't take French. They didn't grow up with French. Now they got to live there, put their kids into schools there. And it's a large adjustment. So we've struggled with so many factors, but things have changed. And the why? There's lots of this. The taxes have remained the same. So what's changed? We have become a hockey religion all over again. And that goes back, I will go back as far as to say, we made a trade years and years ago. We traded for Scott Gomez. And many will look back at that and say, you can't tell me that's a tipping point. It became start of a tipping point early. Yes, Gomez didn't do what Gomez did in New York or New Jersey. He was largely a failure in Montreal. But when Gomez came, one of his best buddies signed here, Brian Gionta. Gionta went on to become a Hab and was a good Hab for us. Started to change the way things were. And then when you fast forward a bit, we named an American-born player a captain. He was a good player, just not a captain, not my choice of a captain, and that was Max Pacioretty. Mm-hmm. But what happened after that? It was a fallout with him and PK Subban, and Subban was thrown under the bus, and he was the first one dealt out of town. Mm-hmm. But the Montreal Canadiens made a trade, and we shipped Pacioretty out. And then when we shipped Subban out and brought in Shea Weber, that was really the start of the epic change of the culture. Because when the players on the ice want to change the way the program has to be run, you then start to change the players that want to be here. And by choice, now we can choose whether we want them here or not. Because we don't sign every free agent. We just have to sign the right free agents. And, now that is carried over to the Nick Suzuki trade. That was a big one coming in because now he's our current captain. And some drafting. And we drafted some American kids. And luckily, they're not playing tomorrow. Right? Like, Hudson and Caulfield are studs. They do great things for us. American-born players, and we locked them up into 8-year deals. That's a game changer, in my opinion, because that solidifies what has been in the process for the last 10 plus years of changing the culture. So these kids want to play here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Vince, what do you think? What are your thoughts on the culture?
I've done a lot of thinking about this. My thing is, I'm going to kind of drift back about 6 years, and Steve knows where I'm going with this. We had a bad one. We had a real bad one in Bergeron, and I think he put a hurting on our culture. I think he made players not want to come here because he didn't know what he was doing. Not that he didn't know what he was doing. Sorry, that sounds terrible. The decisions he made, I don't think were beneficial long-term for the team. I think they created animosity with the players, like the Pacioretty Subban situation. Like, that was awful. Like, that, it was embarrassment for the culture of the team because that should never be out in public. So what I'm noticing now is I'm seeing more of a clear vision with St. Louis, Hughes, and Gordon. I'm seeing a winning identity, and I think a lot of teams in the league want to have that identity. There's not a lot of teams out there that have this type of identity that we have. These guys go down in a game, and you can bet your bottom dollar, Steve is the first to say it, Montreal never gives up. And I get disappointed sometimes when they play a bad game, but when there's 2 minutes left and they buy in to what St. Louis is telling them on the bench, we're going to get a point. We're getting a point most times than we're not. And that's a big thing. Also, another thing too, opportunity. there's more opportunity in Montreal now in terms of because we have a bigger salary cap. We're able to offer a little bit more, not high contracts, but we're offering more longer term. And I think stability is so important for culture of a team. And for me, seeing 7 or 8 guys signed like we have right now that are studs, it keeps me absolutely pumped. Like I want to watch every game. I don't want to miss a minute. If I have to work, so stressed out because I'm missing a few minutes of the game. But this is a beautiful thing to watch. Like I can't believe the turnaround. I didn't think it was going to happen this fast, and I am so thankful. So my main thing is a clear vision and winning identity. That's what the culture is to me now.
I think the culture comes from a few different things. I think a lot of it is basically a combination of what both of you have already said. I think the European feel of the city. I think I don't know that I agree with Steve on the trade as far back as that. I don't think it hurt. I think it allowed players to come in and see what Montreal has to offer. But I think the two biggest things that help the culture here is players see what's happening in Montreal. They see the growth of the team. They see the trajectory we're on, and they want to be a part of that. Then they see Suzuki, Hudson taking team-friendly deals for the 7.5, and $8 million range, and they say, "Hey, you know what? Do we want to be a part of that? Do we want to take less money and be part of a potential multi-Stanley Cup run?" Which is, I think, what we're setting up for, because I've been thinking over, especially over the last 3 or 4 months, you can compare this team now as it stands to a lot of those 70s teams. You see the pieces in place, you see the attitude, you see the way the players are playing, as you mentioned, Vince, the never give up attitude, play right to the final horn. And another thing that Steve and I talk about all the time, you play for the logo on the front, not the name on the back. So I see players doing that, and they're coming in for 7 or 8 million. They're not coming in for 14 million. How many times have we seen, them dirty old Leafs as an example? They strap players in for 12, 13 million, and as much as I love Edmonton, I love Connor McDavid, I love all that, they're having a problem with it now too. They got 2 guys that are making, well, McDavid signed 2 years, 12 million, I think it was. Draisaitl's in the 14 million range. You can't build around that when you have so much money locked into few players. Montreal has seemed to work around that, spread the money out, give players more money on team friendlier deals. They're still going to get their money. And I'm sure, at some point they'll get a big contract or whatever. But I think the players they're bringing in are the players that want to win the cups worse than they want to get the money, than they want to get the big contracts. Real quick, I just want to touch. You guys talked about the Max Pacioretty thing. He's the one that should have been traded, as far as I'm concerned. How you trade away PK Subban, who is at the time, Carey Price, we all know he was the franchise player at the time, and we all know the relationship between Carey Price and PK Subban. How you trade away your franchise player's best friend and expect, there not to be trouble. I think the only saving grace was they got Shea Weber back, which, Shea Weber and Carey Price, as we all know, are good friends from international hockey as well. But that trade just blows me away. Whatever was wrong in the dressing room, I'm sure there was other ways to figure it out. And Max Pacioretty should have been the one to go. In my opinion, that's just how I feel about that. So, anything else you guys want to add?
A winning environment that attracts ambition. Like that's the thing. I actually learned that in my life early on. Like I played soccer, not pro, but I played soccer, and that's what our coaches always emphasized. If you have a winning environment, it attracts ambition. You're going to want to work harder no matter what. If you're losing 3 games in a row, you're still going to want to work harder because the environment is, we want to win. We want to win. We want to lose. When Dobish cried, that wasn't because he was a baby, man. He was hurt. He wants to win. He doesn't want to let the team down. And I think that's how most of these players on this team are.
Yeah, that's the difference between a bad attitude and passion. I think what you're describing there is the passion these guys have, that it affects them emotionally, and they're not, it doesn't mean they're weak. It just shows you how bad they want to win. Steve?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and let's remember, we are the youngest team in the league, and we have young kids, and I call them young kids because I've got kids older than a lot of these players. But they're young kids, and the maturity level that they are showing in their ability to surround themselves with the same work ethic. We're seeing it. We were seeing it all, at the beginning of the Olympic break. All these young kids are on the ice. They're being told, don't skate in the park, go home and rest. These kids just want to be out there together, and they're non-Canadian players. Hudson can go back to the U.S. I don't think Demidov was going to go back to Russia, but I'm sure there's a Russian community somewhere where he could go hang out with people. But they just want to be on the ice together.
Mhm.
And when they have that brotherhood of passion, energy, youth, the exuberant effort, everything ties in together. And these kids want to win, and they want to win badly. That ties back into a comment you made about the Leafs. 4 guys, $12 million. They got $50 million in 4 players. We're getting 6 and 7 players in there for that. So we're building a deeper roster with the same amount of dollars. That means, and I'm glad he's gone, but we don't have to put Max Domi on the ice, right? We can go another line deep, and then we can still be productive. So, when a culture is brought in, and Hughes and Gordon know, they know what they want, they know the direction that they want to go with this, and that leads into, how can we do this, not for 1 year, not for 2 years, but how can we build a process where we're 6, 7, 8 years transitioning?
Mhm.
Because you have to have turnover. They've already said, and part of where we're going with this is the upcoming trade deadline, which is really going to last for the next 9 days, because after the Olympics are off tomorrow, after the gold medal game, I think the freeze lifts Monday.
Mhm.
We need to make trades. They have already proven, the general managers, they're not making bad trades for the now.
Mhm.
And you may have to make one of those trades for the now, but you're not sacrificing everything you have. And when we have guys like Zarovsky and Hage, and we still have Reinbacher in the minors, and an Owen Beck, and a Jacob Fowler, we have the now and we have the future, and we've still got all our draft picks. So they're doing the right thing because people want to be here. They're proving they don't overpay. They refuse to overpay. The Carey Price deal, getting rid of his contract, is huge. That was a massive win for us. And they bred a culture. The culture is different here than it ever has been.
Mhm. So that leads us in. Let's talk a little bit about the trade deadline, potential deals. I know I'm hearing a few different things. I know the three of us are the savvy, you know, beat reporters with our ear to the ground. We've all heard different things. Not really. We're not pros. We're just hacks. But, I've heard a few different things. I hear Montreal still wants Kyrou pretty bad out of St. Louis. He's not doing so well, so his stock might be down a little bit. But I hear Gordon and them are, 3 or 4 times this year, they've already contacted St. Louis about what it's going to take to get him. I'm also hearing through a few different sources that there is a deal in place with LA for Lane Hudson, especially since what's the big fella's name there? The French guy got hurt. I can never remember his name. Since he's got hurt, they need to replace him. So I'm hearing there's a deal in place. They're just waiting for the Olympics to be over. I don't know how true that is. Could be rumor, speculation, or whatever. But that's the two big things I've heard is Montreal still wants Kyrou out of St. Louis. There's potentially a deal in place for Line to go to LA Kings, and I think all three of us will agree that I don't see Line playing another game for Montreal before he's traded out of town. What have you heard, Vince? Have you heard anything new or interesting?
I follow all those rumors all over Facebook too, and I saw something interesting the other day. I think something was mentioned about Bobrovsky.
Mhm.
I think he would be 100 times better behind Dobish than Montembeault. I wouldn't mind getting him, but what do you have to give up for him?
Mhm.
I don't know. I would give up not much, but I would like to have him. He's a reliable backup for Dobish, and who knows, he gets on a hot streak like he does in Florida, and
Mhm.
he might be lights out for 10 or 15 games.
Yeah, yeah. That's the thing too. Steve, we've talked many times about trades. I think our biggest pet peeve as, the professional broadcasters that we are, or just the average fan is Our biggest frustration is when you have just an average fan. I mean, I'm not slighting the average fan of any team, but it just seems you'll get a fan say, for the most outrageous example, Sidney Crosby is going to come to Montreal. That's a pretty hot topic one. Is it going to happen? I don't think so. But everybody says, oh, we're going to trade with Pittsburgh. We're going to trade a prospect and a first round draft pick to get Sidney Crosby. Well, that's not happening. Realistically, you're going to start with a roster player, your first round pick, and your top prospect. That's your starting point. Are you willing to give that up for a year and a half, maybe 2 years of Sidney Crosby? I wouldn't. But if you're going to give up a first round draft pick for him, I'd do that all day long. I'm not going to willing to trade the farm for something that's not a long-term, 4 or 5 year deal in that 7 to 8 million range we've talked about that suits the building plan of what Montreal is doing right now. Would you not agree, Vince?
I'm before this Olympics, I told Steve, because we've touched on this a little bit, that I would take Crosby for something like you suggested you wouldn't do. But now that the Olympics are almost over with hockey, I have kind of changed my tune a little bit. I love Crosby. I love him. He's a beautiful player to watch, but I think his best days are pretty far behind him now. And I think, yes, I would give up one pick for him if we could get him, but I'm not giving up the farm for him. I'm not giving up Zarovsky. I'm not giving Demidov, and I'm just not going to give Lane Hudson. If Crosby comes, we got to give up a pick, a high pick, and that's about all I would sacrifice.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you with another scenario. So I'm going to just throw this at you real quick. We're going to go to Steve, but I want you to think about who's the player you would want to come to Montreal and what you'd be willing to give up for him. So just stew on that for a little bit. I'm going to get Steve to comment on the Sidney Crosby, that kind of a thing, the trades.
So we talked about the culture, and part of the culture is what players are out there and do they fit the culture. If you go back to, you're right, Jordan Kyrou, does Kyrou fit the culture? I think he fits the culture. He's a young kid. He's only 25. He's locked in that $7 and $8 million range. He still has some term on the contract. I think would be a great addition. Robert Thomas, another guy out of St. Louis, who I think could fit all those aspects of the culture and want to win because they played World Juniors. They come from the pedigree. When you look at other players that have been associated with impending moves, does Nazem Kadri fit the culture? He's a 35-year-old player. He's got a couple years left after this year. I think he fits the culture, but is he the right player for our culture? And the only reason I say that is he's older. Does he have to be that guy? Is he willing to step back and let Suzuki be the guy and him be a supporting cast? And those are things that will change. And they'll change on a day-to-day. Kadri grew up a Montreal Canadian fan. His dad's a fan. It doesn't mean he's meant to play wearing the sweater. I think he could be a benefit if he's willing to accept his role. The others are going to come in and just blend in. I just worry about the overpriced veteran as to what they really think they have to do, because I think that they come in with an expectation different. Now, in saying that, I think the one move that we haven't talked about is probably the cheapest trade deadline acquisition that we could make. Could be a benefit, which is allows us to move out another player easily, and that's the resurgence of David Savard. Because he wants in, and some would argue that we're missing David Savard because he's he can play minutes and he blocks a lot of shots. He's great on a penalty kill, and those are things we've struggled with. We struggle with our penalty kill. We lost Joel Armia, and we lost David Savard, and they were two big ones on our penalty kill. So could we get David Savard back? You sign him to a league minimum $1 million. It's prorated. What's it going to cost you? 160 grand or whatever for the rest of the year. It would allow you to move a player, and again, depending on your ability, we could move a player short term, whether that's a Struble or a Jack guy. And I know we don't want to jump on the Jack guy out of town bandwagon, but if that leads into the next deal and we have to give to get, then we're losing in parts, but we're not losing all.
Mhm.
And I think that's another one that could fit the culture. He knows our system. He knows the players. He knows what it's going to take to be here. So I think that would be an easy one to bring in at the trade deadline. But is it the right one?
Mhm. It is, I guess, if he's maintained his conditioning and stuff like that, it would have to be a tryout scenario, I think, and I don't think anybody would dispute that. I mean, I don't think the dollars are an issue. Cap space isn't going to be an even, after the deadline, roster space isn't going to be an issue because you can sign, more than your 23 as long as you're cap compliant. So that doesn't really matter either. As long as he could do it and hold his own, I would agree. I would think that, he's a valuable resource that's right there waiting to be picked. I see a few different options, like a few different names. Like, we've talked about before, Tage Thompson. I don't think you're going to get him out of Buffalo now. Maybe Tuck you might get, but, Bo Horvat, I don't know if he's available anymore. I know that name's been bandied around a bit in the past. Um, but I think there's options there. It's just a matter of where you get into the more of the specifics. What reality, and I say reality because again, it's got to be a realistic move. And like you said, Steve, sometimes it's going to hurt. You got to give to get. Um, what do you think, Vince? Who's your guy that you want that you would love to see in Montreal, and what would you be willing to give for him?
I'm about 100% sure Steve knows who I'm going to say right now because I've been talking about him for about a month straight. I give up a lot for Tom Wilson.
Mhm.
Getting into the playoffs with that guy is going to put us where we need to be in terms of our physicality, especially if we don't have to give up a Jack Eye. Excuse me. We don't have to give up a Jack Eye. Maybe we give up a Struble and an Engstrom and maybe a second round pick. But on my radar right now, Tom Wilson, he is an absolute animal and he plays the game the right way. I love watching him play hockey. That's it. That's my guy.
Okay, so what's the trade look like? What's happened? How does that work?
I would give up Engstrom, Struble, and second round pick for him.
That's not bad. I don't see that being unrealistic. Just real quick, Tom Wilson right now is at 6.5 million until the end of the 2030 season. So he's in the right dollar range. He's in the right year range. He's 27. Is that what it is? He's 27. No, no, he's 31. Oh, he's older than I thought he was. So I mean, you might get later on into that contract where it might hurt a little bit, but listen. I never thought of Tom Wilson. I'm not going to lie to you. I never thought that name because I don't. I never thought that that's somebody that Washington might give up, but I like the idea. I think it's a great idea. I think your trade prospectus, as you would say, I think you're right on line, for what little bit of GM knowledge I have, but I think it's fair. I don't see, would you be willing to overpay though? Would you really be willing to give that extra, maybe the extra pick or the extra prospect? Would you do that, Vince?
Absolutely.
So you're,
I would do it because he's going to be the difference maker in the playoffs for us. He's going to
yeah,
kill guys
yeah.
and going to be afraid. So yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely the toughness you would need in a playoff. We all know the playoffs are a different animal than regular season, and I think you're right. I think he is the guy. What do you got? Any thoughts on that idea, Steve?
Well, I mean, you're talking about bringing a guy in and what impact they have in the short term, as far as the remainder of the regular season, the playoff drive, because we know that's a different season within a season itself, but the future as well. So he's got term. The term isn't astronomical. With his age, it puts you at the tail end of his career. But we've got a Brendan Gallagher, we've got a Josh Anderson that are going to be in that same dollars per tail end of career effort.
Mhm.
Does he help? Yeah, immensely. Most people wouldn't put Tom Wilson on the radar. Vin and I have had this discussion, so I kind of knew where that was going. Here's the difference. When you look at why would because I know there's two people listening to this will probably say why Tom Wilson. Well, let's be honest. The Pittsburgh Penguins are in the same boat as the Washington Capitals are in the same boat, and you start going up and down the list of players. What does Pittsburgh do with Crosby? What does Washington do with Ovechkin? What does Pittsburgh do with Malkin? Like when these superstars have played their entire career in one city, and you don't want them as a fan, you don't want to see Alex Ovechkin traded in the NHL. The bottom line is he's going to retire. When he retires, you go from greatness, hero to zero with nothing in return. So there's no transition value in that. In order to rebuild, you then have to get rid of the pieces around. Does Tom Wilson have the same career trajectory that he has currently right now if he's not playing with Alex Ovechkin? I'm going to say no. And, Crosby and Ovi are two different players. Crosby makes every player around him better. He shows up, he puts his shirt on, and some guy pats another guy in the back and says, "You're playing with Sid." All of a sudden, that guy's Rocket Richard. The guy scores, and you see it time and time again.
Yeah.
The same thing can't be said for most players with Ovi. He makes them better. The thing is, Ovi plays a different style. He's a rough and tumble guy, which is why Wilson fits exactly in on that line, because he plays a similar style. He knows that. He knows what he can do. He knows what he can't do, and he has to get to the net. So if Ovi's shot doesn't go in, he's getting the grease. And those are big game things that we lack. The Canadian team lacked that for most of the game against Finland. 20 times over, passing it behind the back, behind the net, back to this guy. Shoot the damn puck, make a pass, go get dirty. And that's how we got the second goal against Finland, right? It was Marchand was in front of the net creating a problem. He's pushed in on top of the goalie. The puck comes back and we wire one home. So, you kind of go through that motion. Wilson helps us immensely. I just don't know until Ovi says I'm done whether they move on from him. I think it happens eventually. I just don't know if it's this year. If Ovi said after the end of this year, I'm done, I'm going back to Moscow, he wants to finish his career at the Dynamo. If he decides he's going back this year, I think he could be traded in the offseason. I just don't see that being a name moved at this trade deadline. If I like Kyrou, I think he's a guy that helps. But if I'm looking at, and this is going to come against popular disagreement, if there's one player I think that can give us a little bit extra, whether it's to be there as a prominent role or a secondary role, I think he's proved this Olympics that he still has enough in him. And I'd be after Jordan Binnington, honestly, because I don't think it's going to cost you as much coming back, right? If they deal off Binnington, we can send them Montembeault. Whether that puts it as 2 1As or 2 1Bs or whatnot, it gives us a little bit more confidence in the ability to have a goaltending tandem suited for the playoffs. I'm not confident that if the shoe was on the other foot like it was last year when Monty got hurt and Dobish had to step in, I was okay with that. Going down the stretch, if we are leading as Dobish as being the 1A guy, and he should be because of his record, and Monty being the supporting cast, if Dobish gets hurt, I might as well just put my jersey up till October because I don't have faith in Monty.
Yeah. So, who's your guy? Listen, I really like the Tom Wilson idea. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I never even considered that an option, like I said, but I like the Tom Wilson. But both of you mentioned goaltending. I mean, that's obviously a whole, for years, we've always said we've been spoiled as Montreal fans with goaltending. That's always been our strong point. We've never had to worry about it. Bobrovsky, again, another player I never thought of. That's why I love having you on, Vince. It gives us a different perspective from the outside of mine and Steve's little Oshawa bubble here. Who's the guy? If you could plug in a forward, Steve, who's your guy and what's your trade look like?
Well, I'd be looking at either Kyrou or Thomas out of St. Louis because St. Louis appears open for business, right? As much as I'd love to get Parayko, I think that he would really, really solidify our back end. But if we're bringing in David Savard, he's the much cheaper version and allows us to go get the next piece because I don't think we're one piece away. As much as reality says we're a good team and we're exciting, I think we're more than one piece. So how do you accomplish the goal without overpaying, without giving up too much like the make me laughs do? And what does that look like? If I could get Thomas or Kyrou out of St. Louis and I could send them, a roster player that may be, and again, it may have to be like a Jake Evans type player. If I had to send them Jake Evans, Owen Beck in a draft pick, or Jake Evans, Reinbacher in a draft pick, I'm in. Because I don't think his value is at an all-time high, and we do have assets in the cupboard to get rid of. We have a first and 3 second rounders in the draft. So even if it costs us our first, 3 second-round picks still gives us 3 picks in the top 60. Do we need the first rounder? Everybody's going to say yes. The answer is we do, but we don't. Because of the youth of our team, with all these guys locked in on 7-year deals, and then we have Hage and Zorofsky, yeah, we don't need that first round pick this year because we've got depth coming in. We've got a second wave of people rolling in. So if that fetches us a piece now that's going to be good for the next 3 years, I'm in.
Yeah, I would agree. We're going to jump right in now. I think that pretty much covers our topic. We're going to go into our final thoughts here.
Vince, do you have anything else, Vince, before we jump into that? I mean, it looked like you kind of.
I'm going to throw one name out there because I've been following this kid for the last 3 months, Gavin McKenna from Penn State. I think we got somebody special in this kid. He scored 8 points last night against Ohio State. That's incredible. Like that, you don't see forwards ever doing that. He's he's insane. This kid is special,
and we know he can fight.
We sure can.
Yeah, just don't say anything about his mom.
Yeah,
his sister's on the books. Don't say anything about his mom.
Yeah.
I mean, to get a guy like McKenna, I mean, whoever gets the first pick overall, it looks like they'll take McKenna. I just don't know that they're trading that pick away.
Yeah, that'd be a foolish move, I think. That's one that's going to haunt GMs and get them fired.
Yeah, I think, unless you're trading a bona fide superstar, and let's just say Vancouver gets the first pick. Let's just saddle them with the dubious task. They're not trading McKenna to us unless they get a Lane Hudson or a Cole Caulfield or a Demidov as a start, because they're going to say this guy is the cat's ass. He's the savior. Is he? He could be. If he's anything like Matthew Schaefer coming into the Islanders and making an impact, similar kind of trajectory, it could be dangerous. But that might be a pipe dream at trade deadline day, and that would be massive. But as far as going into the culture of what we have, the culture of why we built it and what we want to continue to build, I think we have to stick to teams that are in the little bit of the shitter, that have players that are in the age group of 25 to 28 years old, that have at least two or 3 years minimum of term where we can then re-sign them again. I think that's where we need to be. And I don't know that there's tons of those guys available. There's parts that are going to be available to come in, but I'd like to see the hockey trade where we strengthen for a few years and not just thanks for the 17 games and the whatever 4+ playoff games we get in, and thanks for being here and move on. Because we've got room to grow, and I'd like more players to grow within. And we didn't talk about guys like Bolduc and Demidov. They're not re-signed yet, but they can be. So we could go from a core of 7 guys to a core of 11 guys that could be here on long-term deals, and we just need to add the right pieces.
Okay. So now we're going to jump into our final thoughts. I'm going to let Vince, or if you don't mind, I mean, if you want to go later, Vince, we can. I'll let you jump in with final thoughts. Basically, if you got anything that you want to, maybe something's come up in discussion, something else you want to add before we move on to the ever important trivia question.
Okay, well, I'm gonna leave with this tonight. I don't think I've ever been as excited over the last 20 years of my life to watch a Montreal Canadiens team, and I think we're going to make a splash in the playoffs. I'm making a prediction that we're going into the conference finals this year.
Woo! I like this guy. Steve. Where'd you find him?
Well, I sent him a Temu gift card, and he's on, so it doesn't take much.
Vince, 1 episode in, and he's giving us a hot take right off the very beginning.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you got, Steve? You got anything you want to add before we go on?
He's maybe got his sport thong on a little bit too tight today, but I like it. Again, we are a team that has shown that minus a 5-game stretch where we conceded 26+ goals and lost badly, we have been a team that gets a point in 80% of the games we play. We're a team that could be everybody's worst nightmare. If you watch games, whether it's a Canadian feed, which you guys will get most of, I subscribe to the ever so generous gray area of IPTV and can watch the away broadcast every time if that's what I want. And sometimes I have to when it's blocked out on my service, the Canadian feed. all the American broadcasters, they all say the same thing, that Montreal is the team that general managers are going to start to mold their future rosters around, because we're doing it the right way. We're not overpaying guys. We're young and exciting. We transition the puck well. We play with passion. I mean, when you see guys like Caulfield and Hudson and Slavkovsky and Demidov and Suzuki and Dobson, and they're all having the time of their life out there. When one guy scores, you would think they all get credit for the goal because they're all as pumped and excited to be there. It's like Vin says, it's been 20 years. It's been since the last cup that we've really had this kind of excitement around the team. Mm-hmm. And you know, we're all going to get frustrated when we lose, whether that's a game on Thursday or next Tuesday or 6 Sundays from now. We're going to lose a game and say, what the heck are we doing, guys? But that's okay. It's because we care, right? Because we have such high expectations. The frustration is easily set. But we are a team that's on the rise. At some point, we got to make a statement. Mm-hmm. Is that this trade deadline? If it's not this year, it's got to be next year in free agency. Because we can't be like the Toronto team. You know, those idiots just seem to squander the guys in the prime of their career. And you know, we saw it. I mean, we're down. Well, I'll zip back. We're down in a game the other day, and Suzuki plays hero. And the Maple Leaf that they should have kept, they let go, and he scores the big clutch goal. You know, whereas they got Captain America there in Toronto, and you know, I don't even know if he knows where the city is on a map most days, because he doesn't know where the hockey rink is when it counts. Yeah. So, you know, we have got to make a statement. I'm hoping that this Olympic break has come at the right time for us as a franchise. I'm hoping that the meeting of the minds, and when I say that, I wasn't invited in that conversation, so they must be talking about more important things. But we've taken that time in his organization to really do a quick sweep of the talent, the draft picks that we have, who's playing where. We talk about all these guys. We haven't talked about Pickford playing out Medicine Hat. Where does he fit in? Where do we see him, or when do we see him playing in the NHL? So we could move some assets because we know we got some coming in. I just hope that, I would like to see it this year. If I'm making a hot take, I would like to see them go a little bit more in this year, because the whole conference has been terrible. Toronto's been terrible. Florida's been terrible. You know, Boston's not been good. Surprisingly, Buffalo has been. You know, so the teams that could have given us a rough go, New Jersey has struggled. The conference isn't pulling away. This might be the chance to make a statement and make a run. So okay. I'll say the same thing. I'm thinking we got to be in the conference final.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope you guys are right. I have a few final thoughts. One, actually, you mentioned again about the Leafs, and I think when Hugo was hired, I think they met with Jeff Molson, and I think they all sat down, and I think they learned their lesson from the Leafs, where, as we all know, the core four, we've talked about it, Toronto pumped all that money into the 4 players, and then they had nothing left. I think Hugo and Jeff Molson sat down when they were concocting their plan, or when they were pitching the idea to Jeff Molson about a rebuild and everything else. I think that came up, and I think they said, look what happened in Toronto. They pumped all these dollars into 4 players, and then it was whatever friggin' scraps you could find at the yard sale or the flea market to fill in the holes, and it didn't work. And I think they all got on board the same page and said, look, let's keep this to the 7, 8, 9 million range and spread it around to 8 or 10 players as opposed to 4. And I think that was a big move. Again, I'm only speculating because, like you say, we weren't in the room. But I think that opened the eyes for a lot of teams to say, hey, that's not working. We're going to stay away from that idea. Second, I think we talked about the culture and the players. They're happy to be here. You can see it because while the Olympic break has been going on, you can see the guys on the ice. You see Hudson out there. You see Demidov out there. They're just like kids playing pond hockey. You can't keep them off the ice. They want to be there. They'll go skate every day. You can see it in their faces, like they're like kids at Christmas time. Like hockey's fun for them again. It's not a job. They want to be here. You can see in their demeanor how they get along with each other, how how they do things outside of the game together and the camaraderie they have. And that's not, you can't fake that. That is genuine, and I see it, and I'm sure you guys have seen it in their everyday actions. Um, I think the last thing I want to mention on my final thoughts is a transition period. I think one of you guys had brought it up earlier. There is definitely a transition period. We are, yes, a couple pieces away from being, you know, are we a serious contender for the cup right now? No, I think we can make a pretty good run, but to be that serious perennial contender, we are still a couple pieces away, whether it be that, that lights out goaltender, maybe a defenseman or a forward, to fill in the top six. I think it's coming. I think we just I think we just have to be patient.
He's right there.
Yeah, I think we just have to be a little bit patient with it happening. But I do see a transition period of a year or two where Zurovsky's coming in. I don't see Pickford coming that fast, but I see, Reinbacher. I'm still, I'm on the fence with him. I still think he could make it. But Michael Hage coming, apparently he's going to get in. They're going to give him the contract at the end of his NCAA season this year, get him in for a couple games, which would be exciting. So I think there is a transition period there where realistically, in a couple years, Suzuki and Caulfield aren't going to be the top line. You're going to see possibly Slafkovsky, Demidov, and Hage as the top line kind of thing. So there's growth there, there's movement there, there's transition, and once we get there, if we don't panic, we are going to be the perennial contender or the perennial every year that team that everybody wants to catch. Everybody's trying to catch Montreal. Everybody's trying to get what they got, like Colorado is now. So I think if we don't panic, we stay on the page, make the smart moves. I can see us being a solid team for many years to come. And like we've talked about before, we still have all our draft picks. We still have all our prospects, and there's more draft picks and prospects coming. So you make, like Steve said, you make the right trades. You give up that first round pick this year, which we're not going to use anyways, and if that helps us in another spot, then off we go. On that, I'm going to close off. Do you guys have anything you want to add for final thoughts before we move on?
I wanted to thank you guys for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Excellent. It's been a pleasure having. I know I've enjoyed it, and I'm pretty sure Steve has too.
It's great to have the extra voice, and we can do this again by all accounts. As this thing grows and grows and grows, we want to be realists. I mean, we poke fun at the Leafs, and that's always a good time.
And they can suck it.
Yeah, because they can suck it. As Degeneration X says, I got two words for you.
Yeah.
But we gotta be on board, and as fans, because truly everybody is still a fan. Mm-hmm. Whether you play or don't play, or you get together with your buddies, you're still a fan. The reality is, we've got work to do. I believe we have the tools and the tool masters in place to get it done. Mm-hmm. So I can't wait for the stretch drive. I can't wait. I bet you there's a trade announced within 48 hours of the freeze lifting before we even get to Friday. I bet you there's a trade made. So it'll be an anxious and exciting time, because this is what we've been waiting for a long time.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting, especially like you say, with that trade deadline. It's nice to anticipate. I mean, how many years as Habs fans the trade deadline either meant nothing for us, or we were dreading it because our favorite player was getting traded out, not somebody coming in. So it's nice to be on the other side of that coin.
True story.
Trivia. That's going to conclude our today's topic. What do you got for a trivia answer for us, Steve?
So trivia. So the right answer, how many Montreal Canadiens players have previously won Olympic gold? There's been two. Carey Price and PK Subban were on the 2014 Olympic team, winning the Stanley Cup, going in as Montreal Canadiens. Mm-hmm. A side note, Marie-Philippe Poulin, who's with our development team, she has won many Olympic gold medals. And then Coach Marty St. Louis, believe it or not, won a gold medal as a player. He was with Tampa, but he is our current coach. Mm-hmm. So we'll give a little bit of a shout out to him. So Slick Nick could be in for a small company, and hopefully the next leader in future generation gold medals, because of all these young kids who will be there in 4 years, assuming NHL players go back to this.
So in keeping with the transparency that we try to have on this show, I didn't get it, but I believe Vince, I believe you got the answer. Did you not when Steve asked it before when we were talking about it?
Uh, I had Price. I said Shea Weber, but I was kind of right, but I wasn't right because he wasn't playing for Montreal at the time.
Oh, I thought you would correct it at the time because you had said that Shea was, so you got 1 out of 2.
Got 1 out of 2.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's pretty good. You're smarter than half the guys on this show already.
I don't know.
Okay. Anyways, all right. So that's going to conclude today's episode. Thanks for watching. Hope it's a lot of good thought for everybody to listen to. I want to say a special thank you to Vincent, our guest. Hope to have him on in future episodes. And again, thanks for watching. Remember, hit the like, share, subscribe button. And as my friend Steve always says,
Keep your stick on the ice.